Очень, очень. Я лично не... Спасибо, спасибо.
After decades of oppression under the Soviet Union, in the early 90s, Ukraine started a process to go back to its original cultural and spiritual identity. The Church played a crucial role in this process of the nation's renewal. The joy of the Ukraine's independence, however, has been darkened with stagnation, poverty, abandonment, and hopelessness. The deepening crisis is felt through all levels of Ukrainian society. Even more with the recent military conflict. Many Ukrainians fall into despair, often abandon their families, reaching for alcohol, drugs, and prostitution. Simultaneously, however, more and more young Ukrainians dedicate their lives to God and the betterment of the society around them. Currently, 56 female religious congregations are working in the Ukraine, totaling approximately 500 nuns. About half of them are young Ukrainian women. One such congregation is the Institute of the Incarnate Word, a female congregation working for the needy people. More than 60 sisters and novices live in 10 communities, mainly in the western and southern parts of the country. They arrived in the Ukraine in 1990.
We must make sure that all people live according to the principles of the gospel, and that every person becomes God's creature, turns to God. We work with children, with the sick, the elderly, students, the disabled, because wherever people are, we can bring them closer to God.
The sisters particularly care for abandoned children from broken and poor families. For this, they started to run a charity home in Ivano-Frankivsk.
Children are brought to us by people who know about us. They see children in the backyards or their neighbors, parents that live in poor conditions. Then they see that the children need help, so they bring them to us. Children also come to us via state social offices. When the time of an orphan stay in a state orphanage is over, then a social worker comes to us to place the child in our house, sometimes only for a while, before he can go back home. Many young parents are living abroad for work, and their children are left with the elders, with grandmothers. This means they grow without an example to follow. A child needs a mother and a father, yet they have neither. Mothers only give money, gifts, but there is no relationship, there is no love. She is unable to feel the child's joys and problems. This leads to a void that turns into a crisis for the child, for the teenager. When they come to us, they feel warmth. They feel that they are wanted and that they will be protected from the danger in the streets. They have everything except their moms. We give them all our love, but they have no mother, and that hurts us the most.
24 children of various ages presently live in the House of Mercy in Ivano-Frankivsk. The youngest is 2 years old, whilst the oldest is a university student.
One sister is completely responsible for medical issues, whilst other sisters do the homework with the children after lunch. The sisters try to spend as much time as possible with the children, to see how they are developing, see their problems, their crises, and thereby be able to help.
Sisters run a second House of Mercy for adult women, single mothers, and pregnant women. Currently, 6 mothers and 6 children live in this house. Some of them work, others study. There are mothers who themselves come from an orphanage or from broken families. They have no means to live, nowhere to stay.
Women who come to us with children in their arms have no education. They have no culture. Nobody taught them elementary hygiene. They have no good family model to follow. These women come with various addictions, alcoholism, or a messy life. Our job is to help them be a good wife, a good mother to her child, help the mother to understand what it is to be a woman. We live like a big family. Mothers cook the food, wash the dishes, clean up, watch over the children, and work like ordinary women. Good people truly help us in all sorts of ways, in whatever way they can. There is a bakery in the neighboring village, and they bring us our daily bread. People call and ask, "What do you need?" and bring. This house was donated to us 4 years ago in a dilapidated state. The building had nothing else but windows and doors. We started the renovation. Over the last 4 years, we simultaneously continued the construction work. Various organizations help us, particularly Aid to the Church in Need, for the help of which we are grateful.
One of the largest female congregations working in the Ukraine is the Congregation of the Little Sisters of Mary's Immaculate Heart, founded by a Polish Capuchin father, Blessed Honorat Kosminski.
Від імені церкви та згромадження приймаю твої обіти і засвідчую, що ти є повноправною сестрою нашої чернечої родини.
The 15 sisters live in 4 communities in the western Ukraine.
In 1888, when the church was persecuted, it became impossible to accept new vocations to the religious life. Our founder felt a light from God that he should set up a congregation that does not wear a habit, referring to the Blessed Virgin Mary, who never wore any special clothes. She was actually the first nun, and this is essentially the spiritual foundation of our congregation. During the years of persecution, all of our sisters worked in different professions. For example, I worked in a factory as a seamstress, and in the evenings, I catechized children. Obviously, this took place clandestinely. It's such a beautiful witness being a nun. Because you are so fully committed to God, you help make His presence felt by the community where you do your daily work. And thus you also bring God's blessing upon the place and people you are with.
The sisters take care of children from poor, dysfunctional and jobless families. The sisters helped by, among others, aid to the church in need, organize holidays for them.
We help these children to grow in faith, become more mature. It's also an opportunity for them to rest. Most of them would not have any possibility for such a holiday trip without outside help.
Любить Спаситель і цих, і тих. Браво!
Children are the future adults, and their future attitude towards the world, their job, is determined by how they relate now to everything in the world, in a way that they become brave, hardworking, generous adults who are sensitive to the needs of other people.
No less important than the charitable work which meets the physical needs of the people is the spiritual one provided by the contemplative nuns. They devote their lives mainly to prayer and to work. After years of war and communist turmoil, the missionary sisters of St. Benedict returned to the Ukraine. They are joyful about their numerous vocations, and presently 40 sisters live in 11 cities all over the country.
Dzisiaj wspomina Kościół wielkiego papieża, który przeprowadził
Young women visit us from all parts of Ukraine. Through the retreats, we got 4 new sisters. The other young women are now married, have their families, their children, though we stay in touch with them up to this day. They know that here there is someone they can come to, who will listen to them, who knows them, who understands them.
się do jej sprawowania czy do uczestnictwa w niej przygotować.
Cloister life is something so beautiful. When you can completely sacrifice yourself to God, but not without difficulty. We practically do not see the fruits of our work. We only worship God, either praying for someone or fulfilling various jobs. We leave the fruits for eternity, and that is the difficult part, because when one teaches the catechism to 100 children, one sees 100 children receiving their first Holy Communion, and that may bring satisfaction. I will see what I sowed, what I achieved with my everyday actions only later on in eternity.
Although the contemplative life is the most important for the Benedictine nuns, they are also open to people's needs.
We set up special activity groups on Saturdays for Catholic families. We want to teach them something practical, some useful handicrafts. We would bake rolls with them or model something from plaster or paint. They would take lunch and play. The sisters would prepare a variety of performances with them for Christmas or for Easter. When this war began here in Ukraine, a small girl started coming to us, a neighbor. She was so hungry, starving for food. And she was so dirty too. We washed her, combed out the lice from her hair, changed, washed, and ironed her clothes. We managed to send her to a summer camp with a neighboring parish. Her mother drinks and she has no father. She would never eat all the food. She was putting some of it aside in secret and would give it to her mother. Somehow we began helping her mother as well. Then the girl began bringing other children from the neighborhood, also from poor families.
The Benedictine sisters see how the armed conflict affects the situation of Ukrainian families on a daily basis. Many families have lost husbands, brothers, or children. Many families live in fear and uncertainty of what the next day might bring.
They do not see the sense, the purpose. Why should they defend their country in the name of what? People need somebody to give them a purpose, a reason to live, because without a goal in life, man cannot live. When there is no purpose, one does not understand life and depression develops. Many end their lives committing suicide. A purpose of life brings joy into our life. However, we will understand better the purpose of life when we understand the purpose of death, the meaning of death. When we see that we do what we do in the name of God, then our approach to this war and everything else is different. For us, it is important not so much to talk as to show that God exists. Through our way of living, maybe even through this habit, our presence alone testifies that there is God. And if there is God, then there is a reason to live. We do almost everything ourselves. We bake our own bread and to order. The sisters also bake wedding cakes and birthday cakes. We have our own orchard of tasty plums, about 100 trees. One sister works there alone. We receive or buy vegetables only in the winter. Otherwise, they all come from our own garden. We undoubtedly have a shortfall. And so we depend very much on our donors. We are very grateful to Aid to the Church in Need because they give us an annual amount for our upkeep. Without people's help, without the help of our benefactors, we would not be able to devote so much time to prayer and to adoration. Jesus says, "Seek ye first the kingdom of God, and all these things shall be added unto you." And if we put God first and foremost and trust Him, He will give us our daily bread and will send us someone who will help us with our necessities.
Another congregation doing great charitable work in the Ukraine is the Orionist Sisters. They are involved in ministry work at the local parish level as well as with the homeless. The congregation began its work in Kiev, eastern Ukraine, in 1996.
When we arrived here, there were a lot of homeless people. They simply lived on the streets. It was so terribly cold, and they were living on the streets or in staircases. They came with such frostbitten feet, hands, noses, faces. Well, it was horrible. It was the first time we'd seen something like that.
The Orionist Sisters are still helping the homeless in Kharkiv. Meals were initially served outside, regardless of the weather. Since the construction of the shelter, these men and women enjoy a warm meal indoors, sometimes their only meal for the day.
For the homeless, their lifestyle is predictable. Either they get into a fight, or they themselves get beaten up, or someone robs them, or they fall somewhere. I look after them, and sure, they come regularly. Then healing is possible. There is also the possibility to bathe. We have 2 showers. We also have a trimmer. Sometimes we do a buzz haircut because they have such a zoo park that no amount of washing or spraying helps. We put all their things into a bag. They have a bath, and then we try to dress them into clean clothes.
Пусть Бог хранит вас.
Здоровья вам, долгих лет жизни, горячей большой любви и мир на земле.
Спасибо.
Dostałam prezent, prezent, tak? Będzie jeszcze bogatszy dom.
In addition to helping the homeless, the sisters also help street children.
These children didn't have parents in most cases or were from dysfunctional families. They organized themselves into gangs, and whole groups were living underground in the ventilation ducts. Conditions there were terrible, with burnt walls because fires had sprung up many times. They invited us into their home. We sat down. They said, "Please, make yourself at home." Their dream was to have a home. They created an imitation of a real home down there. There was a rug they had found in the garbage somewhere and laid it smartly. No matter that the sheets were filthy, but they were there. "Sister, bedding is a must, isn't it?" they said. We spent some time there, drank tea, and of course we said a prayer. And it was so great because they received us like, you know, people of the church, right?
The Orionist Sisters were recently obliged to add more tasks to their daily program. The ongoing armed conflict in eastern Ukraine leads to an influx of refugees.
For over a year and a half now, there have been large numbers of refugees. They come for the basics, at which time we also feed them a regular meal, hot soup and bread every day. A year ago, there were about 70 of them. And now there are 80 up to 100 a day. They also get clothes and ask for medicine. They feel humiliated that they have to come here, so we have to do it gently. Sometimes we see in their eyes that they want something, so we go out and ask, "What do you need?" Because these people are, well, desperate. They never thought it would take this long. Neighbors call that their house had been demolished, that there is nothing left. They are traumatized. They've really got it hard. They cry. Sometimes we also have tears in our eyes listening to their stories.
Как начали бомбить Донецк, так мы сразу и уехали. Это получается летом. Вот. Мы уехали в Харьков, пока сидим здесь, потому что дом разрушен, возвращаться некуда.
У нас семья большая, у меня две бабушки, которые одной 80, второй 90 лет, и за ними нужно ухаживать, и там просто они бы пропали. Мы их забрали с собой. Сейчас вот зима, нужна закупка дров и так далее, у нас печное отопление. Вот, домик снимаем развалюшечку такую, удобств никаких, вот, поэтому все нужно.
Houses run by the sisters are maintained mainly thanks to the generosity of the diocesan bishop. The sisters can also count on help from anonymous donors.
Sometimes local people, often from around here, bring some euros. A lot of them bring clothes. Often they're parishioners, but also regular people. They come and say, "I see that you provide help, feed people. Is there anything I can bring?" I answer yes. Some have apples in their orchards, some grapes, so they bring them and we hand them out.
The Orionis sisters carry help to whoever needs it, whilst they themselves live in a very modest apartment that needs renovation.
The sisters have been living in this apartment for 15 years. The bathroom, kitchen, and upstairs neighbors who flood us are our biggest problems. The flooding was so bad that the plaster from the whole ceiling came away. This mold, this is a real problem. We have to inhale it, and this is really bad. For the moment, we don't have the money for renovation.
If we want to teach people, first of all, we have to show through our testimony that God should be first in their lives. That is our main task.
If they're going to try to change their lives, then there is hope that they will get out of this. But without God, under these circumstances, well, without God, it's simply impossible to make it out of this crisis.
Saint Don Orionis said that love will save the world. The more we help, the more love we give, the more we must know that the world will be saved.